Hey folks, Eshan here from All Wyse Transformation, where I talk about spirituality, self-care, and mental health. And today I wanted to chit chat about, as I put my hands in front of the camera, I wanted to chit chat about spirituality. I don't think in the process of creating um, this podcast that I've really talked about any of these particular segments. And so I guess spirituality, right? And so I only can speak about my spirituality. Definitely grew up in the church, going to church in the Protestant tradition, a little bit Catholic, but mostly Protestant Baptist tradition. Yeah, going to church every Sunday and dreading it, not wanting to wake up and throwing a tantrum or going really, really, really slow. And my mom is rushing me to get ready, to get dressed, to go to church, to sit in church for 2 hours or so. Um, yeah, I didn't really resonate with that. Um, but on the side, unbeknownst to me, or specifically not knowing the language, I was creating an altar. If I found a beautiful piece of jewelry, or seashells, or crystals, or pretty rocks, and sometimes a bowl of water, not really knowing why I would. And so there would be a space. And my mom coming to me one time and saying, like, what is all this? What? And I didn't really have an answer for her. And she's like, where did you learn how to do this? And again, I didn't really have an answer. But I've always had this spiritual connection or the spiritual sensation or tingle. And so I started doing research. First, it took me to the path of Wicca, witchcraft, and I really resonated with that. And then, I started looking into my own spiritual background because I was born in Haiti and then I'm Haitian. Um, into voodoo and sort of that mix of Catholic and an African-based religion that's sort of been smushed together. And so one, I had to get over the hump of the prejudice or misconception about what voodoo was, and because I think my mom did a very good job at only feeding me Catholic, Protestant, feeding me sort of Protestant, reading the Bible. Not that I ever read the Bible, that and I read bits and pieces, and not that I remember anything that I did read. And so the towards a more earth-based practice felt more appealing to me, felt more authentic to me. Because if you know about colonialism and the brutality that the Catholic Church and most missionaries took on some of the recipients, you would gag, especially in those early years of the Catholic Church converting native people. Um, Horrendous. And 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 I don't want t- I don't want my deity to be covered by a Christian version, Western version of religion. I knew as much as voodoo had a very rich history, and there are lots of people who are called to be hunguns and mambos. I just don't think I'm one of them. Um, I know some great people who are practitioners of voodoo and hoodoo and hungun so who are hungun. And even I think for me the two didn't feel right. Um, a Christian and sort of an indigenous practice different. And so um Egyptian deities really called out to me, and Yoruba deities really called out to me, and um, Nubian deities and Middle Eastern, and um, so I found myself with the belief that my will alone can mold or change reality to what I want, from manifesting money to manifesting a lover to healing, right? Like the ability, and it could be argued to a certain extent, prayers are a form of spell casting. Or it's probably more so in the realm of asking for a wish, asking the universe to help you out. That closeness to divinity seemed more appealing to me. Within the Christian practice or the Abrahamic practice, there is the person, the priest, between you and your divine. Um, and I don't know if I've ever had language. It just never felt right, and maybe it never felt right because the person who was preaching was also preaching um, hate, in to a certain degree, in the sense of homosexuality, in the sense of 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 moral behaviors for men and women, right? Like it it's hypocritical at times. Don't get me wrong. I think as practitioners of a spiritual path or mysticism, at some point you are going to need a mentor. At some point you are going to need a person to guide you in your particular practice or to enhance your particular practice. And so, Ifa priestesses, Yoruba priests, they serve a purpose, but they are not between you and your spiritual practice. They give you a roadmap of the traditional practice, and that roadmap is what's been practiced for generations, and you're just picking up from where an ancestor left off. And so that's a beautiful thing, I would say. Um, and then there are solo practitioners, individuals who choose to practice um, solitary. And I think I probably fall under that category. In my early years, I did try to find a coven to be part of, and I found one, but it didn't stick because it was all female. I want to say it was all female. It was in New York City. Um, I was the only male, and I was the only queer male. I don't know what would have happened if I did stick with it. But I am, and a solo practitioner. I've made dabbles of trying to find a coven to be part of, and it just never happened. Um, and so I've kept up the tradition of having an altar, and I've started incorporating more so ancestor worship. On my altar, I try alternating deities, um, from from nature spirits to spaces for ancestors. You know, I have seasons where on my altar I have a Yoruba deity, Oyam, or I have seasons where I have deity, horn god on my altar. And so, I have a practice that I engage in that feel more aligned with who I am. Um, it feel when I do ceremony or when I create a particular spell for abundance or for healing, um, it feels good. Um, and maybe it's a thing that I have about with authority. Maybe I have a thing about authorities, and maybe um like m- maybe that's not why I'm part of a coven or part of a house, right? Because a coven is more of a Western term, and a house, depending on the African tradition of that house, specifically if they're Ifa or Yoruba, uh, it still is a person who's dictating, right? Who's saying like these are the rules, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that because there is a place for mentors and teachers and guides and facilitators. I'm one, for goodness sakes. Um, I think for me, I've just never found a space that felt right, and I think that's important when you're looking for a witchy or earth based spiritual practice, from shamanic practices to to sort of esoteric practices, right? They all require you to have a sense of confidence, and depending on your belief, you're tapping into your own energy as well as the energy of the universe and as well as the energy of the materials that you're using to cast your spell. And so I'm with you. I know that my my mom believes that I'm worshiping the devil, and anything that is not with the Christian framework is basically worshiping the devil. Buddhist worship the devil. Muslim, worshiping the devil. So anything outside of um, and maybe Muslims, they definitely are under the Abrahamic religion, but from a Christian perspective, right, that's the wrong path, and also vice versa for I don't, not so much. I don't think Muslims do this. I think more so Christians do this, at least from my experience. But I think there are Christians who do believe that Christianity is better than Islam, or and vice versa. I think those that that does exist. But it comes back to me about like I don't I don't need I don't need the Christian framework. And to a certain degree, I don't want it. Um, it's never served me. It's never made me felt welcome. And mind you, there is a difference between a spiritual practice and religion. Uh, they have, some of the same elements, but they're um, and that's okay. Because I know some witchy Christians, or Christians who do dabble in some hoodoo, and so or even root magic, right? And so I don't think you have to sort of be one thing in it, and I don't necessarily uh there is there is one right spiritual practice. Uh, I just know dancing naked in the woods around a bonfire, um, coming up with ingredients for a spell or for a ceremony, and finding outfits to enhance the ceremony, right? Um, the 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 engagement in the ritual practice, from creating sacred space to calling the four corners. Um, engaging in that feels natural, feels right, feels beautiful to me. And to imagine a world where I have to hide that terrifies me, and to a certain degree, we do, because in our particular political climate, anything that is out of the cis heteronormative framework um, is demonized. And again, that's a very Christian thing, right? It's always them versus us, right? It's good versus bad, hell, heaven, right? Like there always has to be an out. In my spiritual practices there isn't. There doesn't have to be enough. There is another way, right? From practicing from Ifa to Yoruba, right? And not saying those are witchy practices. That those are legitimate religious spiritual practices. But within that framework, you can't, um, for lack of a better term or word, spells, or protections, right? Like it has that framework embedded into it. Um, but there is particular format, a particular particular items, right? And the same thing can be said, about practicing witchcraft. And I do consider myself to be a witch, and I do consider myself to be a person who follow natural energetic energy. If that's being naked in the wood, dancing around the bonfire, right? Uh, or howling or wailing at the moon. Those are very earth-based practices, and that is appealing to me. I don't want my church to be sanitized with hard chairs that you sit on and stained glass windows. I want my church to be the center of a meadow, the middle of the wood, uh, or in a cave. I've never done a ceremony in a cave. Um, but that would be nice. So a spiritual practice, as I believe, is a very personal thing, and it has made me who I am, and I'm grateful for that. All right, folks, I gotta get going. I'm currently doing my lawn. Adult. All right, folks, you be good to yourselves.